Okay, welcome everybody. Today we are going to talk here about environment, human rights, and fight against extreme right. And this event is organized by the Communist Party of Finland and the European Left. Welcome everybody. We have three participants: Olga Athaniti, which is an actress and radio producer and leader of the European Left Migration Working Group, and of course member of the Syriza. Welcome, Olga. And then we have Fabio Picchi, who is programmer and militant of Brazilian Workers' Cause Party. And here we have Liisa Taskinen. Liisa is medical doctor, vice president of the Communist Party of Finland, and I am Tiina Sandberg, general secretary of the Communist Party of Finland. Welcome again, everybody. So I think that Olga also is ready. So I could let you speak first, Olga. You have around 15 minutes to talk about our topics first, and then I will give the same time for Fabio and Liisa as well. So please, Olga.
I hope you can listen to me.
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody from Athens. Welcome to our meeting and to our webinar. I hope all you are fine and well. Thank you so much for inviting me here this evening. I think that the environmental issues are issues of great importance, even more than our society knows nowadays. Because up to the middle 20th century and beginning from the 19th century, I think that the environment and nature were just for the majority of people in the so-called first world, in Europe and the States, just a scenery for well-being or wealth-being. But nowadays, climate changes, or maybe the escalating climate crisis, led to a global concern due to discomfort of the first world by occasional brutal explosions, the so-called forces of nature, and all that is called for, let's say, concern and grief. For instance, we've had the Katrina typhoon in the United States a few years ago, or the floodings that we find from year to year, both in France or in Italy, on the European cataclysmic events. But meanwhile, on the not so nice third world, environmental issues are issues of, let's say, tragedies all around the countries of Africa, South America, Latin America, and the world that is not so, let's say, easily seen by European societies. We can really discuss about it for days and days, and we have some very easy examples to show on what is going on with the environmental changes and the environmental crisis in the third world. And because there are these changes and this crisis that leads to people fleeing from their countries and searching for refuge in the so-called first world, that is in Europe or in the States. I have to remind you that even before COVID-19 and this global situation, we've had tens of thousands of people trying to flee from Bangladesh because of the flooding of the 1/3 of this country's grounds due to global warming and the cataclysms that global warming gives. We've had tens of thousands of people trying to flee from Libya in order to come to Europe not because they were searching for better wages, but because due to the climate crisis and to the temperature rising in the sea, fishing, which is their main source of living, became more and more difficult every year. We've had the lamentable example some years ago of many different countries in Africa that started to live in the verge of malnutrition and without any real water supplies because of the global warming, because of the climate changes, because of the ground becoming more and more difficult to be cultivated. And these people are people that we don't see very much. I know, and everybody knows when we're dealing with these issues, that even the term climate refugees does not exist in the international law. They're referred more as climate migrants. But are they really migrants? Please let me give you some points in order to discuss this issue, if you're willing to do so. Though there's no legal terminology, we can't believe that there are many different points that can lead us to believe that we're not dealing with climate refugees, climate migrants, but climate refugees. For instance, the first major political factor that has to do with this, which is led both with neoliberalism and authoritarianism, is that in many countries that are suffering from global changes and global crisis, we have authoritarian governments that give the possibility to multinational companies to play their own game. The latest one was in Brazil, and we all know about the deforestation of the Amazon. But before that, we've had the situation in Ghana, in Africa, the situation in Niger, leading even to civil conflicts, even to ethnic cleanses, being led by coup and governments that are closely friendly to the neoliberalistic and capitalistic political and economical elites. Tell it mining, or these countries that became nuclear waste storage bins, or you may tell it mining with the so-called today precious metals that are very necessary in order for us to have our portable devices. I may remind you also about the brutal intervention in national economies by the large companies. Everybody remembers what happens, for example, in India with Monsanto and the suicide of farmers in large scale due to bankruptcy, in large scale, due also to the fact that tens of thousands of people remained without land, remained homeless, remained without hope, and they tried either to flee to find poor wages in other parts of India, or leaving India altogether in order to find jobs as salaries in other countries. Also, I have to remind you of the assassinations, the persecutions, and the very difficult life activists live in these countries, because it is such a political issue in maybe the 2/3 of the world having to deal with climate crisis and the economical and political issues that derive from climate crisis, that these the governments in these countries don't even want to have anybody opposed to their political and economical plans. So, dealing with all these points, we have to seriously ask ourselves whether we can really speak about these populations as climate migrants and not climate refugees, and giving the possibility to lead to politics according to this terminology. Before giving the floor to our next friend, let me tell you one or two things about human rights deriving from the climate crisis. First of all, many things that lead to non-democracy and are very much combined to climate changes does not only exist in the third world, but we can every day feel it and live it also in Europe and the first world. First of all, the thing with Earth. Generally modified organizations and organisms, generally modified organisms that are being said that they're going to feed the world, they destroy the Earth everywhere, in Europe also, and they create a major dependence between food as a life factor and big profit of multinational companies. Energy, the big E, everybody discuss it, very few want to really solve it. We have the issue, the political issue of the power in concentration, dealing with energy factors. And on the other hand, we have the possibility to democratize energy by using sustainable sources of energy and renewable sources of energy in a context that has nothing to do with the big plans of the neoliberal planification. Not being a tool for more profit, but giving the opportunity in every community, in every city, in every country to produce the energy that really needs, and to give the possibility to everyone, to every community, to take the profit of the energy for their own good. Same thing happens with water. Everybody knows what's going on by not having the possibility to have access to pure, healthy water. The privatization of water, the exploitation of water, that in some countries like Greece, for instance, France before, and other countries also, are even points in memoranda politics. The privatization of water is a key factor that can lead us to understand that we cannot discuss human rights if we are not even able, and we don't have the possibility to really choose what thing we're eating, what kind of water we're drinking, and what kind of air we're breathing. So these fundamental human rights are deriving from the way that we are treating policies dealing with the profits against people, against human societies, and has everything to do with public health. Last point. As leftists, because everybody here in this panel, we're comrades and friends, and we're leftist people, we need to plan ahead. We need to focus on problems that are really actual problems in global societies, and we need to give an alternative, a total political and economic alternative that has to deal with all these issues. We have to stop to see actions that are really against humanity and against the planet as a whole as granting opportunities. We have to talk to our people, we have to talk to working classes and let people understand that, for instance, nuclear activities, excessive mining, coal and fossil fuels, big issues on solar planners, huge wind generators are not just something that gives you a job and gives you a salary, because it has everything to do with what you are living for, the way that you yourself and your family And the generations ahead are going to live, or they are not going to live in this planet. So it's a major political issue, and we need to make people understand that dealing with the environment is not a new age thing. It's not an elitistic approach, and has everything to do with people's future and present. So I think that discussing the just transition between the way development is really dealt up till now, and development is really being treated in rhetorics of the neoliberal capitalistic group, and our own perception of development is a big different thing. And we need not only to plan ahead, but also to have the guts to cut policies that they think, that working class people think that they are in their favor. They are not. They are against them, and we need to plan ahead for a common living future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olga. And now I'd like to give the floor to Fabio Picchi. Fabio, please.
Thank you, Tiina. So yeah, thanks a lot for your intervention as well, Olga. I would like to bring a slightly not different, but I would like to focus on another, like to take another angle at these environmental issues. So of course, climate crisis and environmental issues, they grow graver every day. However, it is not a new issue. Like since the 70s, they have been denounced like by researchers, even within oil companies. And like those researchers have been blocked to access from the public, and they got widespread knowledge in the 90s. So in a way, we see like now some capitalists like Bloomberg and like all these people, like even Elon Musk, of course, like he doesn't look like a left-wing person, of course, but he's working on like a renewable energy and electric cars. So what I want to say, what I want to point out here is that like capitalism has been aware of this situation for a while, and while it was not possible for them to extract profits from this issue, the issue was not addressed. And now that they can, there is a conflict, but it is a conflict between monopolies, like who will win the energy race. We will get like electric cars and BMW will just go bankrupt, or will then be able to move to electric. So what will happen to all the oil companies? So there is this conflict of interest. And of course, as Olga pointed out, the situation gets worse and worse because basically we're letting an irrational and very slow mechanism solve the issue, that is the market. So when the issue will only be solved when it becomes profitable. And this, in a way, relates a lot to the corona situation. Like it is a global problem. Like it can be addressed country by country, even if we're told like Finland is doing well, now Finland is coming into second wave, now this other country is doing well. Like we can't look at the problem like this because people move between borders all the time. So it is a global problem, but we have like no real way of addressing the problem like this in an international way. So yeah, what I want to point out here is that these global problems, they can't be solved under the capitalist mode of production. And like I feel that both the environmental issues and the pandemic are good examples. Like with the pandemic, the capitalists, they were not even able to do what they're supposed to do, which is like profit from the disease. They can't even do that. Like the vaccine race is a total mess. so it goes on to show that we're approaching revolutionary times, and the system is like displaying its instability and its ability to address social needs. Something that I would so given this context, something that I would like to point as a danger in looking just at the environmental issues in isolation and not thinking from a class perspective is that these issues, as I pointed out, Bloomberg, Elon Musk, they are being used by capitalist forces. And like I feel that they have to be addressed rationally. So we can't say, for instance, and this is like just a minor point, which I disagree with Olga, like we can't instantly like ban fossil fuel energies or even rule out nuclear power, which like for some countries is like the only way they have to achieve like progress and develop themselves. And what I want to point out is that the backwards countries, for instance, Brazil, where I come from, we still use very inefficient ways of production. And it is common, at least I follow European media and North American media, it is common to say, oh, okay, this country like is using fossil fuel, it's polluting everything, or it is more common to see that being addressed to China, for instance. China is polluting the world, China is evil and whatnot. Well, of course, like if you look at England in the early 20th century, you would see like how bad it was. So we have another interesting problem here. So these countries, they are not allowed to use these technologies, or they will be shamed internationally because it pollutes the environment. However, if they don't do that, like people will starve, or people won't have access to commodities that have become a need worldwide. Of course, the solution to that would be if the developed world would reach out and say, okay, let's work together, let's put this plant here and efficiently produce crops, efficiently build machinery and whatnot. But this, of course, never happens. Like imperialism wants the backwards countries producing raw materials, producing like basic food. They don't want them to develop. So they will never take superior technology to the countries, and then this struggle shows up. I want to bring that up because I have seen the environmental activists raising their voice against the deal between the EU and Mercosur, which I think has some very good points, but the problem here is that this, of course, if you look at the deal, it harms Brazilian industry in the sense that European products will get there and Brazilian industry won't develop. But at the same time, it harms European crops because like Brazil has a huge territory, Argentina as well, can produce large amounts of beef in an unsustainable way, destroying the land, as Olga put it. But then it is like a commercial issue, and like they are not thinking on the environmental issue. And then the environmental problem shows up here just as some flavor to mobilize the activists. But I think that we need to look at the problem from like a larger scope. And here I would like to remember like Thomas Sankara, the Burkina Faso revolutionary. So in an interview that he gave, he said that what Africa needs are not like medicine or doctors or food. Like we need tractors. We need the progress from the developed world. and if you don't give it to us, we will have to develop it ourselves. So yeah, I would just like to bring this this perspective to the discussion, and then regarding climate refugees, yeah, we see this becoming an issue every day, like the typhoons in Southeast Asia, of course, but at the same time, as I was saying, that the current system cannot solve this problem. We have like lots of war refugees already, and this is established concept in international law. However, very little has been done to address that problem. Like we see it now happening in Bangladesh with Myanmar. Thousands of people going to Bangladesh, no help sent. I watched this week that they announced that people were being transported to a dangerous area in Bangladesh in danger of typhoons. So they are putting the refugees like in a bad place. But then Bangladesh is being shamed for that. But at the same time, like Bangladesh is a poor country. Like I imagine, of course, like if Brazil got like from one day to the other tens of thousands of refugees, like how would a country that already has tens of thousands of people living in hunger handle tens of thousands of refugees without international help? So yeah, this goes back again, like the refugees issue as the pandemic, as the environmental issue is a worldwide issue. So you can't expect the neighboring country to solve the refugee problem, especially if you bring into context that, for instance, the refugees, like the refugee situation came out of an environmental issue that much like many times is not even a fault of the countries in that region. Or if you take wars, for instance, like the war in Syria, I can hardly say that it is like fault of Syrian people or even the Middle Eastern people, like or the Iraq war or any of these wars propelled by the imperialist powers. So in that sense, I feel that the way to mobilize the working people against or like to solve these issues is actually denouncing the imperialist forces and how the capitalist system works in a perverse way to create and develop these situations. And yeah, and that of course they can't be solved under this framework. So that's what I would like to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Fabio. I think that Olga wants to have some answers, but I will let Liisa speak first, and then I will let everybody to comment each other's speeches. So, Liisa, please.
Okay, so hello to everybody. Mankind has drifted into troubles because of its own carryings on. Biodiversity loss, increasing inequality and climate change threaten life in Finland and all over the world. This is how the Vice Rector of Helsinki University, Tom Böling, and the chairperson of the union, Students' Union, it's called Ylioppilaskuntien Liitto, Tapio Hautamäki, yesterday opened their letter to the editor of Helsingin Sanomat, which is the biggest and most influential and liberal conservative newspaper in Finland. And populations of vertebrates have decreased more than 2/3 in short time. Sea level rise threatens to cover states, and ecosystems are in danger of being destroyed. If the climate warming will be over 1.5 degrees, there will be lack of water and food, and risk of conflicts is high, they continue. And this is because 12 Finnish universities have published just about 3 weeks ago 12 theses of sustainable development and responsibility. That above mentioned letter, which was quite a long and good writing, is like to inform public about it. So the climate warming and ecological crisis are present in our everyday life. We can see it in TV news. There are most different kinds of conferences about it. Scientists have been writing and nowadays even talking about it for a long time, really from the 70s. Long series of statistics show it also. So there is no doubt that these phenomena are man-made, although there are, of course, those who still deny it. And politicians know it. Leaders of the world know it, that what's going on in this world. And the most influential forces, leadership of the biggest multinational military industrial conglomerates, oil companies, and so on, know it. So what has been done to save our planet? Well, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, Shell, the company everyone knows, was asking in Twitter, what are you willing to change to help reduce emissions? How ridiculous. We should ask Shell what Shell is willing to do. It's the one who can really do something. Of course, everyone has to do something, but anyway, so far Shell is willing to trade oil by maximum profit. Also in Finland, our politicians believe so much in this biofuel that they are willing to look not only our own forests, but also tropical rainforests for it, to put oil plants there and so on, and madness. And also they prepare cellulose, which is not at all a high-tech product, and it's used as a raw material, for instance, like for toilet paper, but it can be also used a very good raw material for biotechnology and much more. It's really useful, but at this time it's at world market the price is high, so now they're building cellulose fabrics in Finland. I think more than we have raw material for them. So far, not much is done. In spite of good decisions, there have been done really good decisions and agreements like Paris Agreement. So no wonder that Greta Thunberg is really angry. Really. So, but natural resources of our planet are limited. And our planet has a limited sustainability of greenhouse gas emissions. Our planet is a closed ecosystem, and where everything, whatever happens, affects everything. Whatever we do leaves its trace. We cannot change it. So we cannot consume more than is the capacity of our closed ecosystem. It sounds so reasonable and simple that everyone should understand, but what went wrong? So now our system, which is called market economy, so it's capitalism, has stolen results of the workers' work in industry, agriculture, trade, whatever, into the hands of mighty industrial and finance capital, and only to use it to grow bigger, more rich and mighty, to have even more power to produce more and more than is the capacity of our ecosystem. Of course, capitalism is based on the continuous growth of the economy. It's also based on exploitation of human work and natural resources. Therefore, there are in this world haves and have-nots, rich and poor in every country, and globally, rich and poor countries. Nowadays, they are called developed and developing countries, so that it sounds a little bit better. polite, maybe. Natural resources are also renewable and non-renewable. But even renewable resources must be used wisely, otherwise they might be lost, become non-renewable. For instance, like tropical rainforests are an example. If once a critical area is logged, the very vulnerable ecosystem is destroyed for good. And it will affect the global ecosystem so that it will be difficult to predict what's going on and what kind of processes can be started with it. That risk couldn't be taken, but what's going on, Fabio already said something about it, and I think you can tell even more about it. So resources of our planet must be used for all people, for who live on this, our world. And the mankind, we have all the knowledge and skills and resources to solve poverty, to give clean water and sanitation and food, reasonable housing, primary education and healthcare to everyone in the world. This, what I said, are some of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this really must be done. And it can be done. It's not impossible, not at all. It's not even so expensive. Just to cut a little bit the military expenses and it's done. And we also know that this will be the best way to lower birth rate. We know it by laws of demography. It has happened in our developed countries already. Everywhere it has been happening. If we can stop global warming and ecological crisis, we can also keep all now inhabited areas habitable and cultivable, and to improve living conditions there where people are living now, in their homes. And if not, millions of people have to live and have left already their homes and seek better places to live. That would be that fair part of the solution, but how to make it happen? So those who benefit of this market economy have long ago understood really that there will be end to the system and they are prepared to survive. They mask the reality like Shell trying to pass the buck to private persons, make them feel guilty of their own, our private persons' overconsumption in rich countries. Recently, the Research Institute of the Finnish Economy in Finnish Elinkeinoelämän tutkimuslaitos, ETLA, put it more aggressive. And I think that when I first read this, it felt me that they must have been heard what I have said, because it's like an answer to what I have been said and demanded. So they say climate change is a fact, but its development and implications can only be directly anticipated. The COVID-19 crisis shows that ending economic growth is not a viable response to the climate change, so it temporarily reduces emissions. Rather than abandoning the free markets, we should improve the prerequisites of operation, make sustainable consumption decisions, and speed up technological progress and productivity growth. Thanks to the technological progress, the future will be much brighter than the one anticipated by projecting historical trends far into the future. This is a direct citation. And they named the whole memorandum, Let Markets Solve the Climate Crisis. In the end, at the conclusion of the memorandum, they say most critical is to be able to make political decisions with efficient implementation and include all countries of the world to the Commonwealth Party. Yes, that's it. but they say it directly, only that maybe they don't mean the same as we, the progressive left forces. And this is really for us a task. We must see how this ecological crisis, climate warming, must be in the focus as whatever we do, and as the target where all our decisions and what we do must be directed to that, and we must really collect our forces in all progressive forces and people who are considered this and who are ready to work it, so that to put press to make political decisions and to limit the power of those who have big companies that are really those who have the power. But let's talk about it more. Thank you.
Thank you, Liisa. And now I will let you all to answer, because there were some questions. So Olga, please, you can start. I think you have some experience about the refugee crisis also from Greece. Olga, we can't hear you. You have to open the mic, or did Jiri just closed it?
No, I've closed it myself, but now it's okay, I think, huh?
Yeah, it's okay.
Before discussing the refugee crisis in Greece, which of course is a crisis mainly coming from conflicts in Syria and the Middle East, but these conflicts had everything to do also with the exploitation of the natural sources in these countries. And of course, these conflicts didn't start just a couple of years ago, but they started decades and decades ago, because the exploitation of natural resources and human resources all over this area is a common knowledge, but a well-kept truth. But before discussing this, let me just point out a few things, because I've really enjoyed both the speakers that I had the possibility to listen to. Of course, it's common knowledge, and we have to be very to come to the point when we say that capitalism has also prevailed, that it has everything to do in taking profit, even in the capitalistic crisis. Yes, it is so. But the thing is that in global societies, either the plan of profit by the elites is going to prevail, or a favorable plan that is really answering social needs is going to take the lead. And it is our main political goal, and maybe we have to be driven by this question in order to give an alternative as left-wing political forces and social forces that are really concerned on what's going on today. Let me give you an example. In Greece, for instance, now Palia, a very small island of the Dodecanese, very picturesque one. Recently, a contract has been signed between the Greek government, the neoliberal government, and the very well-known Volkswagen industry in order to put wind generators in Astypalia. There is a difference between giving to Volkswagen the possibility to install 32 wind generators as they want, in order to have profitable, to take profit from this. And it's completely different to install in Astypalia one wind generator in order to give the population there the possibility to have clear energy and cheaper one than the one they have now. It's a different thing to discuss on what's going on with the huge solar plant installations, and giving the example of French communities that have started from the late 90s to install in different villages small solar panels and with generators in order to have clear energy, to pay less for that, and the surplus of this energy to be sold to other communities, and the profit from that had been given to the so-called shareholders, and the shareholders were the pupils of the local schools in order to take the profit and benefit of the schools. So how we deal with the new possibilities of technology and science in order to give us a new answer in energy is the key, in order not to demonize the new possibilities we're having. Dealing with nuclear energy, I know that this is a huge issue, not only between the political elites and the left-wing forces, but even among the left-wing forces themselves, which is understandable and logical. But my opinion is, and the opinion of the anti-nuclear community as well, the question is not who is having nuclear capacity. Of course, the United States, of course, the capitalistic forces has everything to do with demonizing China or whatever in order not to have what they are having. But the thing is that either the Americans have it, or the Europeans have it, or the Chinese have it. You have to deal with two things. One, that nuclear energy is a no-no thing having to deal with global peace and the prosperity, and that actually the nuclear lobby has nothing to do with nations, because the whole thing is who is going to install power plants, nuclear power plants, and take the profit against another opponent of the same category. So in order to work in favor of the global community, we need to ban the issue altogether. And we need to take, as I've said before, to take the risk and explain to the working people in this huge nuclear industry that the huge salaries they're having, or the less huge salaries they're having, are just an alibi for the life risks that they are taking themselves and their whole community for years and years to come. And last thing, of course, we have to make it clear to everybody that nowadays typhoons, rivers overflowing, the desertation of one's fertile land is not an act of God. And it's not just being good people that we have to approach the others, the victims of that, in order to give them help. They don't need help. The escalating of this situation is a big political issue. So we need to make everybody understand that if the Honduras population is suffering, we don't have to give them medicine and food, but to stop hydroelectric and irrigation projects that they are having everything to do with the big profit that American corporations are taking from that. Or that the 300 or 400 new migrants in Bangladesh to Dhaka every year has everything to do with the climate changing, that has to do with the mining, even to the poles of the big corporations that are multinationals and have nothing to do with so-called national pride, that they attained something that another nation didn't attain as well. So in order to discuss this, I think that we need to really take all the precautions to make everybody understand that it's a fundamental human right to have clear water, to have clear air, to deal with really nutritious food, that these elements has everything to do with living a good life. a sustainable life in a sustainable planet, and that the question of who is who is damaging most the planet is an alibi in order not to deal with why they are damaging the planet and our lives. So in order to see who is polluting more, we need to do whatever it takes in order not to give anybody the possibility to pollute and take profit from it. Because the moment they can't take profit from it, they'll stop polluting, because it won't be profitable anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Before I let Fabio comment, I just want to tell you an anecdote, because I think that at least Olga and Fabio don't know which is the most expensive edifice or human construction in the earth at the moment. It is actually situated to Finland, close to Rauma, and it's a nuclear plant.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, nuclear plant that we now in Finland are constructing, and it has been so expensive.
Decades ago.
That yes, and it has been for several years, dozens of years, and it's actually the most expensive human construction in this planet at the moment. And still there's serious doubts that when they are going to try to put it on after a couple of years, they have always, of course, told that it will be like 1 more year, 2 more years, that's level. Maybe it would be in a couple of years, but when they are trying to put it on, all of the people in Finland are very scared about that moment, because it seems that it's likely that it doesn't do what it should be doing. So we have this kind of nuclear problem also here in Finland. Thank you.
I know, and please tell your people in Finland that once you are putting a power plant on, you can never actually put it off.
Yeah.
Even when it stops working, the nuclear waste never stops being produced.
Yeah.
So please think about it very hard before putting it really on.
Yes, I think we do. But now I give the speech to Fabio, please.
I would like to agree with like what Olga said, and also thanks for the anecdote, Tina. I totally was unaware of that, but I still like what I wanted to point out is that the technologies that are being used, they need, of course, to be well, as Olga put it, addressed rationally. Well, there are the trade-off with nuclear energy, like the waste. I must say that I don't fully understand. But for instance, if you take a small country such as Japan, of course, they had the accident, the planet is damaged forever. But one could argue that maintenance was not taken seriously because maintenance is not profitable. So yeah, you have that other end, and like Japan is a highly industrialized country. How would they be able to have like energy enough in the 70s to build that that economy? And like if you take Iran, for example, like it is a huge country, probably the most developed country in the Middle East, and of course they want to develop and they are locked. So in this situation, you don't even have like the capitalist interests, because the country is completely sanctioned, and they are actually trying to like in a way it's pretty much like the situation in North Korea or Cuba. like it is a banished country that is trying to like live in isolation, and they are trying to develop with whatever resources they can. And one would argue that between nuclear power in Iran and fossil fuel power, you would have, I mean, I am not an expert, but this would be like a discussion to be had between the experts, like what decisions should we make here. But then due to the market interests, and of course, in case of Iran, if they have the capability of deploying a nuclear facility, of course, it might mean that they have the capability of building nuclear bombs, which nobody wants any more of those in the world. But in the context of the current political situation, like it is the only way for Iran to be like to negotiate with the US or with the world that is like actually strangling the country. If you look at North Korea, it is what they have on the table. Like it is the possibility of having developed a nuclear weapon. It is what allows them to be like respected and not totally removed like from the planet. So it becomes like, yeah, it quickly becomes an issue. And I think that the enemy here is not those countries that they are trying, like, for whatever reason, to develop, like, I mean, nobody would want to develop a nuclear bomb. Why would Korea, North Korea, for instance, want to develop a nuclear bomb? It is just like and then I moved the discussion somewhere else because it's not even about the plants anymore. But basically, they are trying to have a way to bargain or to negotiate. And if you go to the negotiation table with the US, of course, it's like negotiating with someone with a gun. Like if you would like be on the table and like you're having a discussion, but one of the persons has a gun and the other one doesn't, like it would be considered an unfair debate. Like any contract coming out of this debate would be considered unfair. So yeah, I would like to bring to the discussion that in this case, the anti-imperialist struggle completely surpasses like these issues about should this country be developing this or should it not. And yeah, this is like my main point. And this also relates to Brazil a lot, in my opinion, because I have been hearing, for instance, this sentence that the Amazon is the Amazon belongs to humanity. And for me, like when Macron says something like that, this is like a keyword to imperialism will take Amazon. Like it is like people imagine like the rainforest, like the big river and whatnot, but it's actually almost 50% of the Brazilian territory, and it's also like the territory of neighboring countries. And there are 20 million Brazilians living there, close to 10% of the population. So it is Brazilian territory. These people like are Brazilian citizens. So it is not, I mean, of course, in an ideal world, I would love to say that it belongs to everyone, but in the current political landscape, it is Brazilian territory. And when an imperialist power goes and say, this belongs to humanity, what they want to say, in my opinion, is that I want to profit from that and I want to remove that from Brazil. So yeah, this is the thing that in my introduction I was trying to point at, and maybe I wasn't successful, but I feel that we must not allow the environmental struggle to overcome the anti-imperialist struggle, because of course imperialism will profit from that. Yeah.
Thank you, Fabio. And all the people who are actually viewers in the internet, if you have any questions, if you want to comment, you can ask it. Our host, in technical host, Jiri Mäntysalö, is looking at all your messages. So if you have any questions, just write it there at the chat and he can ask them for you. So it's very convenient way to participate also. And now I will let Liisa to comment.
So many different things. Direct to figure. How did you put it about this Amazon, and which, as they said, that it's the lungs of our earth. I don't think that anti-imperialistic struggle and struggle for environment are in contradiction. They go in hand. They go to the same direction, and of course we have to protect it. Yes, you're correct that what's, as far as I have understood, what is going on now there. The area is used as a capitalistic agriculture. Correct me if I'm not correct, right, at least. But of course there are poor people who also need land and who need, and it's really not so simple. Of course it's easy for us from here, from far, say that what should you do, but of course the problem must be solved there. And in the place and in a fair way, and but in the other hand, it's not only a question of the Brazilians. I think that we should show our solidarity and join our all together to stop this imperialistic abuse of Amazon area, and what comes to, yes, of course, how to solve the problems and overuse of natural resources. Of course, decisions and everything must be done in every level. Now the Amazon is used to produce more and more meat, and it's one of the ways where we can, ordinary people, everyone, can do something really which has an effect to reduce meat consumption. It has been shown that it's really it means it's not just talk nonsense of green forces, but it really is, has its effect. And of course, new technology is also needed, and technology is needed, but it doesn't solve the whole problem. If for instance, in Finland, everyone starts to drive electric cars, it's not the solution at all. It's only a small part of it, and but the main question, of course, is how to stop this capitalistic exploitation of natural resources, and this is also part of the Amazon question. And here we really have, I just wanted to do, even all progressive forces, have they realized the seriousness of the situation? And that of course there are many organizations that are concentrated on one topic or this topic and this, and of course it's very good because they get and gather information of some issues, but all these organizations and political parties and movements should really join together to first, I think that we have to still very much to do to learn more ourselves, even in our party also, to understand the whole situation, the whole big picture, and then how to solve things. Or so many different things, but okay, that's all for this moment.
Thank you, Liisa. I think that indeed there should be more discussion about these environmental and human rights questions. And we need lots of international solidarity. We need to understand the points of view from south, from north, from everywhere, so that we actually can understand what kind of problems there could be when we are trying to focus on the environmental problems. But today we also have at our list to talk about the fight against extreme right. And until now, I think that we haven't been talking much about that theme. So I would next like to ask everybody, how is the situation of the far right in your country? What kind of movements there are against the far right? And what these movements are doing and what should they do? Opinions about the far right and the danger of the far right. And also if you want to connect it with the environment and human rights, it's totally okay. Should be connected in this discussion. So Olga, please, it's again your turn.
Yes, thank you. Yes, discussing human rights, it's also discussing far right or alt-right or whatever we can tell it, we can name it. It's practically the same thing because they are the same consequences in global communities. As you know, in Greece, all these years, the economical crisis years, have given the far right the possibility to uprise for quite a long time. Though Greece is a country that has struggled with the dictatorship and fascism up to the early 70s, far right still exists. And up till now, there is not even a legal frame in order to not having the possibility to make out of fascist and racist rhetorics political organizations. I'm sure you are aware of the big issue of the condemnation of the leaders of the Golden Dawn that have been condemned in the way that the Golden Dawn had been named not a political organization, but a criminal organization. But this is not the end of the far right in Greece, of course, because first of all, we have a huge participation of far right rhetorics and practices in our government itself, before even Golden Dawn had been condemned. So it's not irrational to say nowadays that our government is not the good old aristocratic right-wing government, but a less or more fascist government. And we can see that every day before COVID, during the COVID, by its work that abolish practically a huge number of democratic rights. Not only the right to concentrate in order to give your political view in measures that the government tries to make a reality out of them, and of course they do it because they have the majority in the parliament, but also in everything that has to do with the cultural essence of a democratic, modern, nowadays society. Greece is every day takes huge steps back in the context of the political and social rights and the development of a society that could say that citizens are feeling somehow secure into a democratic framework. On the other hand, because it's not our discussion is not only about Greece, but I think that Greece is a good paradigm in order to understand how a neoliberal government that is deeply connected with the memoranda execution of policies, plus the refugee and migration populations that are coming to Greece in order to pass from Greece to other Western European countries. But Greece still remains, due to the European policies, a jail, a concentration camp for these people. More and more people are coming in Greece. More and more people have been pushed back in the most illegal way by the Frontex and by the Greek government joined forces together. More and more people have been taken out of housing programs, out of educational programs, out of healthcare programs, because they are refugees, because they are migrants, and they are forced to go and enclose themselves in huge camps that they are rebuilt nowadays. More and more violations of the human rights in every aspect possible is coming a reality in everyday life in Greece when you have to deal with the so-called, not so-called, it's a reality, fragile populations, such as migrants, such as refugees, such as a Roma population, such as homeless people, and whatever. So if we want to discuss, in order to connect to this with our general discussion, if we want to discuss the far right situation in Europe, because I think it's not a disease, but it's a social and political virus that knows no borders and goes from country to country and from society to society in huge speed. Let me remind you that in Greece, we used to comment on what's going on in Hungary these days by defining the Hungarian prime minister and the head of the state as a pure fascist. And in no time, we have the same policies being applied in Greece after the change of the governmental mix. So if we want to be true to ourselves as leftists or even democratic people, I think that we need to combine in every possible aspect the escalating catastrophic reality in the planet with the escalating catastrophic reality in societies. Because listen, many huge numbers of migrants and refugees, climate migrants and refugees are coming in Europe. These people are not being recognized as refugees. Refugees or not, they are enclosed in camps as prisoners. They are suffering everything that derives from this situation. But at the same time, the huge profitable plans of the neoliberal forces, both economic and politics, are making whatever they can to take profit from the countries that are rapidly deteriorating. And more people have to flee these deteriorating countries in order to come to the so-called first world. And this is a situation like a roller coaster that never stops. And it will never stop. And of course, these great numbers give a new force to the far right in order to make a new rhetoric dealing with the big clash among people from different nations, from different countries, in order to give the native people of Europe the so-called possibility to have the other countries to serve them, but not to give them any possibility to live as decent people. So nowadays, far right really tries to make a new rhetoric of danger in Europe or in the United States or in everything that has been called developed society and developed countries, that they are really in danger by the people coming in their so-called well-developed countries, but that the people that they're coming from the territories that they have been exploited for so many years, and they keep doing so. So we were not going to deal with the far-right rhetoric. At the same time, we have to deal with what's going on in the neoliberal planning, in their profitable plans, and at the same time, we have to deal that beside all this, we have the escalating of the environmental crisis and the danger for the planet. All these, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, of course, are links that are very well connected together. If we're not going to deal with the one, we can't deal with the others.
Thank you, Olga. And now to Fabio.
Thanks. So yeah, just to, I'll try to summarize like the situation in Latin America, but well, it of course can be expanded to the world. After the 2008 recession, the imperialist forces, like mainly US in the context of the American continent, changed its position in relationship to Latin America. And the first step was the coup in Honduras in 2009. It was like a very small event, I would say, but like we were paying attention to it. And of course, what came next was like a series of coups in Paraguay, in Ecuador. Like Rafael Correa is like banned from the country, his party thrown in illegality. With Venezuela, several attempts of removing Maduro from office. You had, of course, in Argentina, Macri, which was like his election was actually a laboratory for Cambridge Analytica and things like that. So they US politics or international politics suddenly changed, and they decided that like these leftist nationalist governments, they couldn't afford it anymore. They couldn't afford any social programs, like to keep their profits. They they would need to like explore further the underdeveloped countries in the region. And of course, in Brazil, it happened tragically with the Workers' Party government. They like our traditional right wing, like parliamentary right wing, that in a sense dominates the country's politics. They thought that they could defeat the Workers' Party in an election. Of course, they can't, because they are very unpopular. And even with the whole propaganda and all the media tricks that they were able to do, they ended up losing the elections in 2014, and they moved to an openly coup and far-right politics. So what happened was Bolsonaro that we see now, he was actually just a clown, like this joke politician that has and like goes on TV and says crazy things. But he rose up during this time that our traditional conservative politicians moved to a position to like overthrow the Workers' Party government. Of course, you had this huge campaign, now going down into details, there was this huge campaign against corruption, which is like a very vague campaign, and we should always be very suspicious of these vague campaigns because, oh, there is corruption everywhere. Why specifically here are you trying to? So yeah, the media mobilized huge sectors of the Brazilian middle classes and stuff, and they created an environment where the parliamentary coup could be applied. So if you looked at the pictures from the time, you would see like those people dressed in green and yellow, the colors of our flag, and like claiming that the government was corrupt and whatnot. And this gave birth to far-right rhetorics, like you're dressed in the national colors, fighting against the corrupt left, like the anti-communist rhetoric, even if, of course, the Workers' Party is a reformist party, like they were just doing minor reforms and stuff. So yeah, this is how Bolsonaro was born. And actually, I would like to link here to the description of the situation in Greece, because what happened, of course, their plan was not to put Bolsonaro in office. He's a highly unstable figure, like even like both internationally and nationally because of things he says and do. But he was actually the only candidate from the right wing that had any popular support. So to actually elect Bolsonaro in 2018, they had to remove Lula from the elections. He was removed in a fraudulent move, imprisoned, completely illegally, and this is like a consensus among lawmakers in the world. In any sense, like with Lula out of the competition, they were trying to push their candidates, the traditional right wing, but they went so far to the right with the coup rhetorics and the like nationalistic rhetorics, anti-communist, that actually the only possible candidate that was viable was Bolsonaro. So and the link, the link that I wanted to make here is that Bolsonaro is now at the office and his policies are like the same as the traditional right-wing policies. He just has like this ugly discourse, but in practice, they actually do the same thing. If you look at Temer, the vice president from Dilma, he was like, of course, participating in the coup. The Workers' Party, unfortunately, did this class conciliation politics and had right-wing people in their government. Like Temer's policies are pretty much the same as Bolsonaro's policies, removing worker rights, flexibilization of worker rights. Also the Amazon fires, of course, they are completely out of control in Bolsonaro's government, but immediately after the coup, they increased significantly. Another interesting aspect is also violence in the countryside with the landless movements, indigenous people. Like, of course, this also happened during the Workers' Party government because Brazil is a huge country. It's also a challenge to actually inspect everything, but during the right wing and the far right government, this escalated out of control. So yeah, and now what is going on is that the traditional right wing, they are trying to take back power. Like they used Bolsonaro as an emergency solution, and now what they are trying to do is like make this front against Bolsonaro. So if you look, our governors, they opposed Bolsonaro because Bolsonaro, of course, is insane and is even denying the pandemic. And then the state governors, they were like, yeah, no, we're very responsible people. We'll do the lockdown and stuff. So they look good, but in the end, they actually didn't do anything. It was just like for display, and their policies in the end are the same, but they're trying to make this opposition. So during the elections in 2022, you will have a situation like in US, where you had Biden and Trump as opposing forces, which made the left, unfortunately, support Biden, which is like a crazy situation. So yeah, what we are struggling for in Brazil, and what we understand that is the way to defeat the development of the far right, is mobilizing people right now for not only for the Bolsonaro, or like to remove Bolsonaro from office, but for the restoration of Lula's political rights. Because as I said, the traditional right wing, they are trying to look as if they oppose Bolsonaro. So we have to differentiate our politics. Like, we not only oppose Bolsonaro, but we also oppose the coup. We oppose you, who like overthrew the Workers' Party government, who unfairly imprisoned Lula, and we want Lula's political rights restored, and we want his candidacy in 2022. We understand, we don't understand this as an electoral way out of the situation, but as a way to mobilize people, because Lula is the most popular figure in the country. And we understand that any election held without the most popular politician in the country is like a fraud. And in that sense, we borrow our strength from the huge mobilizations that happened in Bolivia for Evo, like that was like also again and a shameful display of these international organizations such as the sorry, I forgot the name in English, the organization that oversees the elections in America. Like they denounced the Bolivian elections as being fraudulent, and that of course gave a boost not only to the far right but to the right wings, that eventually banned Evo Morales from the country, burned down his sister's house, and all sorts of violence happened. But the workers, both the farmers and the workers, mobilized against the coup, and now like the elections have been won again by the left. Of course, we have some criticism there because the people, they were struggling for Evo, but in the end they got Luis Arce. It's not the same thing, and I feel that this is like sort of the way Latin American politics is going too. For instance, you can see this with Cristina Kirchner in Argentina. Like she was under a lot of legal pressure with several judicial persecutions against her, and then she launched her campaign as vice president and not as president, to sort of like negotiate with the right wing. We don't think that that is the way to go, and we also, but we still like totally support and try to borrow the strength of these popular movements, and this is like the way to defeat the far right. Yeah, by blocking the streets as the Bolivian, and also in Chile, of course. Thanks. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Fabio. I'm also a member of the European Left's Latin American Working Group, And I think that these movements now in Latin America, the situation looked very bad for a while, but now these movements have taken back the power to the people, and I think that it has been very nice to see that kind of actions that actually can do the difference, because we here in Europe, we have had lots of campaigning against the far right and against, well, everything, and we have not been so successful, but I think that it's very inspiring to see that someone there in Latin America, like for example in Bolivia and Chile, they have been able to change the things, they have been able to take the power back, and I think that that's a great inspiration to all of us. And now I will give the speech to Liisa, the situation in Finland.
Okay, thank you. Just a few days ago, there was an opinion poll about popularity of the political parties. And for first time now, our True Finns party, which is populistic party, was the biggest, as they said, about 20%. And especially middle-aged men are supporters of that, in this opinion polls, that party. And that party is, it has got many MPs and who are, in Finland they are like, many of them, it seems that they make fools of themselves. And some of them, as if they don't know anything about really politics and they don't understand whatever they are doing in our parliament, or those two who are in the European Parliament also. And it's very easy to think that they are just not serious persons, and somehow they just managed to get there, and they are not dangerous. They are just somehow funny, and it's very easy to mock them about whatever stupid things they say. But I think that it's very dangerous to think about it like that. And in social media, it's very popular to show what kind of stupid things they have done and how they don't care of facts, and like Trump in very similar way. I think that they have quite a lot of really dangerous far-right and kind of fascist forces also behind them or support them. We must be aware of it and understand it, and we have quite a small groups of not political parties that are more openly very far right and can be that they are Nazi or fascist rhetorics they have, and many members of this party of True Finns are also members in these groups, and also members of parliament. And then also it was interesting to hear Olga to say that in your parliament, this Conservative Party is not anymore like this good Conservative Party. It's the same also in Finland. We had this main Conservative Party called Kokoomus, National Coalition Party. It used to be, as we say, the civilized bourgeois party, but this rise of this True Finns party, populistic party, it has affected very much also this coalition party, so that its rhetorics they are fighting about the same source, and they have changed their own rhetorics very much closer to this true Finnish style, and I think it's something that I can't understand, and the leader of the party, I think that he's completely lost in this, what's going on and what's happening, and he doesn't, and I'm just wondering that how close can this coalition party be, like to pull those these forces that are coming closer to this far right and fascist forces, are they also going to that side, or are they pulling back some of these forces? And now, at this time, this True Party and Coalition Party, they are in opposite. They are not in government, and they're still 2.5 years, something like that, to the next election. And then what will happen? Then it's still a long time, and many things can happen. But still, I'm worried about it. And what is there behind this? What kind of forces really are behind this True Finns party? Yes.
Thank you. I had many questions here to make to you today, but I think that most of them are actually already been answered. My questions. I was wondering about environmental crisis against the human rights or with the human rights, and some problems there are in human rights, like that Article 17 says that everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others, and no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. And that's problem, of course, because it's one of the main rights the capitalism needs in this planet. And it was, I think, an error to let this article to be also in the list of the human rights, because it's not human rights, it's capitalist rights. But we already talked also about that. So I think that I will ask at least one more question, because we still have some time. And it actually comes from Olga, because Olga, you said earlier that we should give some answers to people's actual problems and actual answers to these problems of the people, so that we will be, or we would be an answer ourselves would be in the left, our parties would be an answer to the people, to their problems. So now I would like to ask from everybody, which are these problems that it seems that the extreme right, far right is able to give some answers, or actually, or maybe it's just that the people hear an answer, even if it's not actual answer. And I think that we in left, we should be also able to give these kind of answers to the people, something they need to hear. So Olga, if you could start with this theme.
Yes, I think that during our interventions, all of us had already given hints according to each one of us, the way that we approach the issues, but hints have been already given. For me, the main question is, because of the crisis and the deep global crisis that lasts years ago, and COVID just makes it even bigger and stronger and deeper. So in this situation, history has proven that society all over the world, globally, takes a step of radicalization. The big issue is whether this radicalization is going to go left or it's going to go right. And unfortunately, in most examples up till now, it is the right-wing radicalization that is winning the game. Why? Because far-right and fascist rhetoric is simple. It speaks to each one's sentimental way of discussion, and it gives each one the possibility to believe that he or she is a little bit better than the others. So they deserve better. They deserve a little bit more. Our answer as left-wing people, either members of social organization and activists, or members of a political organization, has to deal with this fundamental question. So we have to answer that, first of all, nothing in this global society can be solved in terms of Cold War. Who is bigger, stronger, better than the other? And that each time such a question has been solved in this way, it is not the working classes that have been favorized by this. So we need to also to answer that anti-imperialism is one fundamental tool for every society to react. And that means that we have to push back the rhetoric of the so-called superiority and inferiority of different people according to their native identity, or to their gender, or to their cultural background, or to their religion, or whatever. And that even the rhetoric that has to do with the so-called fundamental rights, as the one you're telling before, Tiina, that, for instance, property is a sacrosanct issue, we have to answer to people that they are naturally a little bit upset about what's going on if they're going to have a small piece of land of their house, that for the capitalists and the neoliberal forces, propriety is a sacrosanct way of putting it a la carte. Because, for instance, indigenous people in the lands that have been long ago and up till now being oppressed and exploited by the capitalists, no indigenous person has his small part of land. Or people that are fleeing from their countries in order to come to Europe, not for a better future, but to save themselves from the different and very harsh results of the exploitation of the First War. Then for these people, there is no question of having land. There is no question of having property. There is no question of being better than somebody else. So as people of the left, we need to make everybody understand simple facts and to discuss this issue with a simple language, not a laissistic one, but give the possibility to everybody to answer in a logical way, to use the brain instead of the sentimental reaction. Because we have to believe and to think again that anti-imperialism without internationalism is nothing, that every clash in this world is a class clash and not a national one, that a planet that is in danger is a planet without borders anyway, because the damage has no borders, because fascism has no borders, because the way neoliberal and political and economical elites exploit everybody in order to obtain gains has no border. So if everything has no border, then solidarity among people has no border whatsoever. Then our care about anybody that is in danger, that is in a fragile position, that is, has been derived from the very basic human and democratic rights has no borders. Because if somebody is going to be a victim of this situation now, the next one is going to be us. And this is very easily a very easy thing to understand it today, because of the possibility we have to see whatever's happening in the world nowadays. So it's very easy to see that what's happening in the Latin America is the same thing that happens in terms of Europe, in our nations, in our states, is the same thing that happens in Trump's administration. It's the same thing that happens all over the world. And just to give a final sentence, I would like to remind everybody that in this very hopeful and very joyful situation, and I'm quoting Bolivia, that it's something that gives everybody hope in order to see that there are nowadays even good solutions and good examples for everybody. Just remember that the political leaders of the Bolivian people for years and years and years always combined the political clash with the absolute care for the earth and for nature and for the planet, and even in ways that we as Western people, as industrialized citizens of industrialized states, don't understand. I'm sure that everybody among us had more than once listened to political speeches by Bolivian comrades dealing with the huge role that the planet, that Earth, that Mother Earth for them is playing to the left-wing social radicalization, to the immediate democracy paradigms, and to a world that is created by the people, for the people, and that has a sustainable future. So I think that this is something that we need to remember, and that we need to put it again in the center of our approach and our political rhetorics in order to make people see the bright side of what can be a different way of living. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that now we have a question. So Jiri, please.
Yes, that's right. One viewer of this webinar wanted to ask that any advice how we can defeat people, far-right people that cannot behave in public discussion. So if you must debate with far-right person, so any advice that how to manage that situation?
How to deal it?
Yes.
So I will give the speech to Fabio and Liisa, and after that I think that we are close to ending our discussion. But if there's some time, I will let Olga also answer to this one. But let's see how the time goes, because we are trying to stop this discussion after 10 minutes so that Olga will be able to get home safely.
No, it's okay, because our curfew in Greece is by 9 o'clock.
Okay, so
now I don't have the same stress I used to have when I mailed you and asking what about our closing time. So it's okay. I'm not so stressed.
Yeah. So in that case, I think that it doesn't mind if we are going to go a couple of minutes over.
No. It's perfectly okay. Yes.
So everybody can speak. Fabio, Liisa, and then Olga, please.
Nice. Thanks. So yeah, I try to organize like these less intervention and 3 topics. The first is a short one. We must not like fall for the temptation of giving censorship power to the bourgeois state. And I feel that with the advances of the far right, this is like coming back, because of course what they say like in social media and also in parliaments, like if you look, I think here in Europe, well, at least it's a language that I can understand. If you see like Vox acting in the Spanish parliament, like it is insane, of course, but we must allow them to say it freely, because anti-communist and anti-leftist censorship is also like very widespread. And if you give the state power to apply censorship to the far right, you give the state the power to apply censorship to the left wing. And we can see this, of course. I have like a small example, an anecdote in Brazil, like how the police behaves when imposing, for instance, these pandemic rules that people cannot mobilize and whatnot. When it is like time to punish the far right, it is completely different than when they enforce the same rule to left-wing mobilization groups. So we must be very careful. And to the comrade that asked from the internet, I feel that as it was shown in Bolivia and it was shown in Chile, we are the majority. So it is a matter of like mobilizing the people and actually struggling against the far right. Yeah, in social media, of course, they can fake a majority with bots and whatnot, but in the streets, well, they can't. And like, unfortunately, the demonstration here in Helsinki won't happen tomorrow. But last year, we could clearly see that the Nazi march was way smaller than the anti-fascist one, and then this is how we should deal with the problem. And then again, like on how to deal with this far-right populism, I feel that especially here in Europe, the solution is to unite the workers, both immigrants and like locals. And I say that because the way the far-right rhetorics work is that they say, okay, so these people came from abroad, they are stealing your jobs or lowering a salary. And like, I am aware of that because I came here and I don't understand the law. I don't understand like how much do people earn. I have like something that I quickly noticed, for instance, is that people here in Finland, when the time is due, they go home, and that should be the way, of course. But in Brazil, like people stay like several hours more, and like of course the owners of the companies are very happy that we stay more. So all these things. So the reason, of course, that there are refugees, but the reason people move around is not because of their will. Like they might think that they want to move somewhere, but what guides them is capital. So you're always like moving for the interests of capital. So how do you solve that issue? Like I know that my presence here and is makes it harder for the Finnish workers or like any, but the solution is to unite our struggle against the enemy, which are like the corporations and stuff. And one problem that I would like to bring to the table is the question of democracy nowadays. It is becoming more and more fragile because of the immigrant situation, because most immigrants, they don't have any political rights. So they are a valuable asset because of not understanding properly the law, generally asking for lower wages, working longer hours, and most importantly, no political rights. So we, in that sense, like we are very valuable. And I think that what the conscious worker would do, and like, of course, we talk to our colleagues at office, we should like work together against that, like demand equal salaries for both immigrants and non-immigrants, demand equal working hours, like, and also demand democracy and political power. Like if you take here in Finland, we are nearing 10% of the population. We can vote in local elections, and this is amazing. But in general elections, we can't. Like you have to stay here for 5 years. You have to apply for citizenship, and then you can vote for. But the funny thing is that you're a citizen enough to pay the taxes and to do all these things, but you can't like exert your vote. And if you go to the United States, the problem is even worse. Like there are 20 million people undocumented, and several people that have the green card for several years, but more than 20 million. But the green card does not allow you to vote yet. So you have to have the green card. So how can you say that the elections are democratic if people like can exert this basic right? So I feel that the struggle for universal voting rights is important, again, as it was in the beginning of the 20th century, when we were struggling for women's rights, Black people's rights to vote. Now we should struggle for immigrant rights to vote, because in Europe, you can freely move around, you can move to another country. It makes total sense for you to be able to, like, if you live there, why would you have no voice in the local political struggle? And then my third point would be the current crisis of leadership, which I feel is why we are struggling to defeat the far right. So I would like to give an example in Brazil. As I said, the far right is a small minority. They might have resources to pay bots or to hire like sound trucks and do their stuff. For instance, here in Finland, I participated in a Free Palestine protest, and it was amazing that like the Free Palestine protest was scheduled. I feel that like almost right after Netanyahu was going into the West Bank, like allowed the Israeli. Sorry, I am missing the English words. Anyway, we were protesting against that, like Israel taking Palestinian lands, and like the far right Israeli protesters, they organized a response protest almost instantaneously, because our protest was a last minute one and theirs were like a last minute one, and they show up with uniforms and national Israeli flags, all the same size. So you see that like when a protest is real, like organized by real people, and and another one is like organized by like some funding and stuff, like professional people that should be there. And of course the far right Finnish with the Finnish flag and the lion and stuff, they were also there, so we could identify what was happening. So Yeah, sorry for digressing. What I want to say is that in Brazil, when the pandemic started, there was a real issue for the poor people. Like, how are they going to eat? Like, especially in the big cities where many people just sell goods on the streets, like for very low prices. So they have tents, or they go into the public transportation selling them. How would they get their money? Like, and also for the workers, like, you have a pandemic, and then your employer is asking you to go to the office or to go to the factory. How are you going to act? And what happened was that all the unions, they closed. Pretty much all of the left gave a stay-at-home order, but this was not the reality of the population. Like, of course, the informal people that sell things, they could stay at home, but they wouldn't have food, so they had a real issue. And the workers were still going to their daily jobs, because the government can tell people to stay at home, but they can't interfere with property, as I said. And then this goes on to show like how this property issue is perverse, because in that sense the workers are like a property of the capitalists. So what happened was that the far right was protesting on the streets, the left was out of the streets, and they were not answering the questions like, how am I going to eat? What am I going to do? So this gives room to far right populism. Like, we must have our answers, and of course we must understand the dangers of the pandemic, but the population has a real issue. We can't omit ourselves, because if we do, this very small minority of far-right insane people, they will be there and they will be giving crazy answers. But if you're the only one giving answers, even crazy answers will do. Like, so we must not take our people out of the field. Another danger.
Fabio, please, you have to be very short now.
Sorry, I'll just stop here. Go ahead.
Okay, that was very important point you made. And now to Liisa, and then after Liisa, Olga, very quickly. But
Okay,
now,
please.
Liisa.
Yeah, our Communist Party is mainly in immigration party. It's topic about what it talks and how it has got its popularities. They are talking about whatever you try to talk with them, they are turning to immigration, refugees, and they have created a kind of atmosphere that there are people who are less innocent. I think that Finland is the only country who is trying to solve the problems, all the problems poor countries in this world, and somehow funny. But I think that too often it happens that in social media and so everywhere, it's this true party and these powers, they are those who define the topics of what we are talking about. And we are like a reactive to that. And it should be on the opposite. And we should turn it, be smart with it. But when it comes to, if you are face to face to a really fanatic far right or fanatic whatever, they don't change their mind. Whatever you say, how much you have to, you tell facts, and so they always turn it so that it strengthens their own opinion, and then it's so you have to really change the topic and somehow, if there are people, audience, to make them understand that fanatic is fanatic, and we cannot. It's useless, a waste of time and energy and your nerves to try to prove him that he is not that he is wrong, because it's useless. And yeah, that's my advice. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now, Olga, quick answer. We can't hear you.
Now you can.
No.
Yeah. First of all, I have to tell you that I totally back Fabio on what he said previously, dealing with the working people and the migrants and refugees' working rights. We have to tell people, by speaking to their logic, as I've told you previously, to tell them the facts. But for instance, responding to their fear that migrants and refugees, for instance, are stealing job opportunities from the others, that the ones that have been exploited themselves as workers, the native working people, are the same that try to exploit also migrants and refugees. Then if migrants and refugees can really have their working rights as everybody else, at the same time, they're going to contribute to the public budget. They're going to contribute in order to give more funding to public health, to social security, to pension planning. They're going to contribute as every working person in order to assure the existence of a social, of public social programs. So if the working people, migrants and refugees, are stopped to be illegal and legalize their presence in the working agenda, they're going to have the same rights and at the same time the same contribution as everybody else. And we have to tell our citizens that the great majority of working positions that are given to migrants and refugees are the working position that no native worker is going to take, and that they never do it. We have the example in Greece. People that are coming as migrants or refugees are almost totally being exploited as workers in the fields. No Greek workers are doing this job. They used to hire Albanians once. Now they're trying to do the same thing without giving Pakistanis or Indian people any money at all. At the same time, we have to make good examples being told and understood. I have an example from Greece. In a small town in the Greek mainland, it's called Livadia. The mayor of Livadia, which used to be, now she is a deputy, but before that she was the mayor of Livadia, a member of Syriza, and so a comrade of mine, together with the Livadia municipality, made a program to welcome refugees and migrants in Livadia. They distributed the families in different places. They distributed the families in old hotel rooms. They made them really invisible in the town, in Livadia town, not because they were excluded from everyday life, but because they weren't in the ghetto. They had been dispersed all over the city. It was easy, this way it was easy for them also to make the proper engagements in order for the little ones to go to school, to different schools all over the city. It was easier for them to place them into job positions all over the city in order to have people, all of them together in one place. So the right wing in Livadia, because there are many there, of course, were very happily they were happily fantasizing by telling everybody else that here in our city, no migrant is here, no one is going to come, and they were already there. Quite a number of them, but they didn't see them because they have been treated as normal human beings, having housing planning, having public health planning, having jobs, and having their children at school. So we need to address people in their logic. In Greece, also, as you know, we have a society that from years and years and years, we are immigrating all over the world because Greece is a small and poor country. So the same people that are fantasizing of the greatness of Greek people having the highest of opportunities abroad, and they are so proud of them and what they did in life, are the same people that they have to remind them that we have been migrants all over the world. In the same time, people are coming now in Greece because they are in a worse situation that we've been once upon a time. So we have to.
Could you make it short, please?
Yes. I'm making a conclusion. We have to step in every possible opportunity in order to give examples and in order to restore the real fact. And one last thing, for us as left-wing people, I think that the main key in order to marginalize the right-wing rhetorics and their agenda is to create many different multicultural events and educational activities, as many as we can, because once somebody meets the other, stops being afraid of him. And this is an advantage that we have always to take under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to Olga Athaniti. Thank you, Fabio Picchi. Thank you, Liisa Taskinen. Thank you, Yuri. I have a new name for you. Yuri. Yuri. Thank you, everybody. It was a very nice event, and I think that we have a very, very good debate. So
thank you, all friends and comrades, for the opportunity.
Yeah. And we are going to see you again in Zoom, I think so. So bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Be safe. Bye. Good night.